From our spectacular campsites on the most remote of tracks to the workshop and everything in between, your next episode of Great Offroad Adventures is just seconds away.
Good day everybody, it's Graham from Great Offroad Adventures and welcome back to another video. Now, sorry if I sound a bit croaky, I've been struck down with a head cold recently. I'm slowly on the mend, but I do still sound a little bit funny. Now in this video here, what I want to talk about is long range communication and especially effective long range communication. Now I'm going to define that term for you in a little bit and what it means to me. I'm going to break the video down into a couple sections. I'm going to talk about GPS devices, satellite phones and HF radio and how to utilize them for long range communication and the costs associated with setting yourself up with one of these devices. Now, unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to own and run every single one of these devices because there's some pretty friggin' expensive numbers written down on a sheet of paper. But I do have family members that have run satellite phones. I've run my own GPS tracker, and I've got friends that are running one of the other GPS trackers on the list as well, or GPS devices. So I do have some contemporary experience with a lot of this, and obviously when it comes to HF radios, that's what I'm running on my car, so I can go into a little bit of detail about that too. What is long range communication? What does that mean for you? I'll tell you what it means for me. Long range communication for me means communicating for over distances in excess of 500 kilometers, closer to 1,000 kilometers. So when you're traveling really remote, away from any mobile phone signal or mobile phone service, so I'm talking remote, out in the desert, Simpson Desert, Canning Stock Route, Amberdell Highway, when you're taking on tracks like that, you need to have something with you that does effective long-range communication. And what I mean by effective long-range communication is the ability to have a two-sided conversation, the ability to send and receive, the ability to converse to somebody else and have them converse back to you. Now, I've included devices on this list that only do text messaging backwards and forwards, but also like satellite phones where you can actually have voice communications backwards and forwards. So yeah, I've got 6 different options that I'm going to talk about, but there are a lot out there that exist. These are just highlighting a couple of options. What I want you to do is if you find one that you sort of looks attractive, looks like it might be useful to you, go and research it, see if there's an alternative, see if there's something similar, might be cheaper, might offer more functionality, go and do your own research. And before I get started on the video, I do just want to do a disclaimer though, that I'm not affiliated with any information that you're going to see in this video. So any websites, any screenshots and stuff that I put on the screen, I'm not getting any kickback from them or anything. It's purely me doing my own research to put together this video. It has led me to these websites that I've found helpful in answering my questions, websites that have been user-friendly when it comes to working out prices, plans, that sort of thing. That's why I put them in a video, because I found them user-friendly and helpful. So people like you that are going to go do your own research will hopefully also find it easy to look at. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of websites out there that are very difficult to use, and it does make it a lot more difficult and murky to go and do your own research. So the websites that I've found have been user-friendly and easy to use, and that's why I've included them in the video. The first device that I want to talk about is a Spot Messenger. I've got a 3rd generation Spot Messenger. They've just released the 4th generation Spot Messenger, and it doesn't meet my criteria for effective long-range communications because it is only a one-sided messenger. It only sends messages out. It's a GPS tracker, and you can send predetermined messages that you set up in your online profile, and it also has a sort of an SOS functionality, much like an EPIRB, or a personal locator beacon, where you push that sends a distress message off to the GPS to the satellites, and then that goes down to the operations center, and then they coordinate with first responders to come and resolve the situation. Cost of a spot tracker. My third generation spot tracker, when it was new, when my parents bought it for me as a birthday present, it was $300. Now they do sort of still range in that price point, and that is just the cost of actually buying a device. On top of that, you need to buy a plan to run with that device. And so I've got written down here, it's a $220 yearly plan for the most cheapest plan. And they offer a month-by-month flexible option as well, that once you spec in the flexible option and you pay the activation fee, the flex option fee, and the month-by-month plan, for a 2-month flex option for 2 months, it's $100. So for us, Jess and I have got a 6-week trip coming up. We're going to need at least 2 months worth of coverage, and that's why I've worked on a 2-month plan. It would cost us $100 to have the tracker set up. Now, I actually have the tracker myself. Like I said, it was bought for me as a present, but I have gone away from using it a little bit because they never had a month-by-month option. It was you'd have to pay for a full year, and I'd maybe use it for 2 or 3 weeks a year. So it was very expensive to pay $220, and it's actually based off US dollars, so exchange rate. So converted, it's 220 Australian dollars, but it used to be like 200 US dollars, and with the exchange rate a couple of years ago, I was paying over 300 Australian dollars for a subscription fee for something that I would use for 3 weeks a year. So $100 for a week was getting pretty expensive. And so that's why I went away from using the spot tracker, and also the fact that it was one-sided messaging. Now, moving on to the next device, it resolved the one-sided messaging. It's also from Spot, it's the Spot X. Now, it's a new device and I haven't personally used this, but I wanted to include it because it does resolve that one-sided messaging problem, but it works just like the Spot Messenger, where it does 10-minute tracking, so it leaves a breadcrumb trail every 10 minutes. It sends that up to the cloud. You send that link to your family and friends. They can click on it, and they can see where you are within the last 10 minutes and where you've been. And that's an incredibly useful function, and it provided my parents, because they followed me when we do all our big trips, it provides them with a great deal of peace of mind. Now, the cost of running the Spot X is pretty much the same as running a Spot Messenger. It's $220 yearly fee, or it's for the 2-month window that we'd need it for, it'd be $100 again for the flex option. Now, it costs you to send and receive messages. So the Spot X, you can send custom messages. It's got a full keyboard on it, and obviously to receive a message as well, it costs you an amount too. I think on a basic plan you get 10 messages a year, and that's includes your incoming messages. So that's 5 messages out, 5 messages in. So you can imagine, if you sent a message out each day to say, yep, we've arrived at camp, we're all good, your 10 messages would get burnt up real quick, and then on top of that, you've got to start paying for your messages. So bear some of those costs in mind, and it might be more cost effective to actually go up to that slightly more expensive plan where you get more messages. So next devices we're going to look at here is actually a range of devices. It's from Garmin. It's the Garmin InReach range, and they have a little square standalone device which you tether to your mobile phone, all the way up to a full-blown handheld GPS. They all offer the InReach service, which offers you two-way messaging, so you can send messages out, you can receive messages. It also offers you, much like the Spot, it offers you like an EPIRB style SOS function, so that if you're really in the deep crap, you can just push that button, sends a distress message off, goes to the operations center, coordinated response with local emergency services, and they come out and hopefully resolve the incident. So the Garmin InReach range, the most basic device, which I think is the InReach Mini, I'll put a photo of it on the screen anyway. To buy that device is $530. To buy the top of the line handheld GPS device is $949. Now, the basic device, you download an application to your smartphone and you actually tether your smartphone to it. And so with that, you can send your messages and stuff on and off your smartphone. So it's quite user-friendly in a way. Whereas the more standalone GPS-style devices with their own screens, you have to type the message on that GPS device itself and send it off. The basic plan, again, all the subscription costs I'm covering in this video are for basic plans, not advanced plans. The basic cheapest yearly plan for the Garmin inReach is $240 plus messages. So if you are going to fire off quite a few messages, you're going to be paying for that. So $240 a year plus 75 cents for every message you send and 75 cents for every message you receive. It's going to get pretty expensive, and so again, it might look to upgrade to one of the medium or mid-range options where you get a certain amount of free messaging. Now, Garmin also do a month-by-month option, so their month-by-month options are $25 a month. So for the 2-month trip that Jess and I are doing, it would cost us $50 plus messages. So yeah, it's not a bad option if you're going to do a 1 or 2 week trip at the start of the year, 1 or 2 week trip in the second half of the year. You know, $25 for that month, $25 for that month, plus a few messages. You're in for $50. Let's say you're going to go through $50 worth of messages. It's a 75 cents to send a message. So you're looking at, you know, a bit over. What have you got there? 60 messages you can send throughout the year or receive. So not too bad really. So let's say you're in for $100 for a year, and that gets you 2 months plus messaging. So not too bad for the Garmin really. Compared to the Spots, the Garmin is cheaper to run, unfortunately more expensive to buy. That's your trade-off though. Now, that's sort of where I'm going to end off the GPS devices. Like I said at the beginning, there's a heap of options out there, and I really encourage you to go and do your own research if you think that a GPS tracker or a GPS device is the route that you're going to go down. The next section I'm going to talk about is satellite phones. With satellite phones, you lose a little bit of functionality from the GPS trackers in the fact that you don't get that every 10 minutes or every half an hour your position uploaded to the cloud, your family and friends being able to click on the link and see where you are. That is something that you lose with a satellite phone. But obviously what you pick up with a satellite phone is the fact that you can actually pick up that phone and make a phone call to any mobile phone, landline, another satellite phone. Like there's a lot of options that exist with a satellite phone. Unfortunately, with satellite phones come an increase in price point again. So I've got written down here Iridium Go. Now I'm going to focus on Iridium because it's by far the most common network and it has the most common devices. But there are other networks like the Raya, and they offer similar devices themselves for their networks. So again, if you like the look of one of these devices, go and do your own research, see if there's an alternative. So the Iridium Go, it's actually a little square portable unit that you hotspot or you sync your mobile phone to. You connect your mobile phone to it, and what it actually does turns your mobile phone into a satellite phone. Now the reason why that's attractive to me is because all my contacts are already in my mobile phone, and all I have to do is download an application to my phone, which then connects to the Iridium Go, and it allows me access to all my contacts and all that information on my smartphone. And I know how to use my smartphone. It's nice and simple and straightforward, and so it's quite attractive really. So the cost to buy an Iridium Go is $1,145. That buys you the unit, and then on top of that you have to buy your yearly plan. Now I've got written down here the cheapest yearly plan for an Iridium Go is $545. and the most expensive is $1,245. And ultimately, the plan that you need is going to be determined on how much you use this device. Now, if you're just having this device to take with you in case of an emergency, you can just use the cheapest plan and pay for anything that you go over in excess after the fact. If you are going to do a lot of remote travel and you want to keep in touch with family and friends and you're routinely going to make some phone calls and that stuff, then it's probably going to be beneficial to go for a slightly more expensive plan that gets you some included talking options and that sort of thing. And that information pretty much is the same when you go up onto the sat phones. So speaking of which, I've got written down here 2 satellite phones, the Iridium 9555 and the Iridium 9575. There's a $100 price difference between them. The 9555 is $1,745 or $1,745. The 9575 is $1,845. The differences between them are negligible, so I couldn't really tell you there. And the cost of running your satellite phone for the year, the cheapest plan I could find is $540 per year, and that is a post-paid plan. So that $540 a year gets you your SIM card to go in your phone, and then anything that you make, phone calls, SMSs, etc., is charged on top of that. So it's 50 cents for an SMS, it's $1.20 per minute for a phone call. So again, if you're going to make a lot of phone calls, you're going to keep in touch with family and friends quite often whilst you travel, you are going to be paying quite a lot for a satellite phone in regards to usage. But again, a satellite phone, there are multiple plans, and there are more expensive plans that offer you included talk and text sort of bundles. But I'm looking at this from a failure safe emergency point of view, where you're traveling along, you come across an accident, and you're only going to utilize these devices in case of an emergency, in which case the cheapest that you can get a plan for your satellite phone is $540 for the year. And whilst we're on the topic of satellite phones, I want to talk about hiring a satellite phone. This is quite a cost-effective option, especially if you're traveling in a group. So if you are looking at hiring a satellite phone, again, I'm looking at these costs for our trip that we have coming up. It's part of our preparation for our trip. We're going to be away for 44 days. If I want to pick up the satellite phone the day before we go away, drop it off the day after we get back, we're going to need to hire the satellite phone for 44 days. Now, just hiring that satellite phone, the cost associated with the hire, $616. Then to have a post-paid plan, which is $5 a day for the duration of our trip. Post-paid plan means that the SIM card is in the satellite phone and it's connected to the network, but we pay for any usage after the fact. So post-paid plan is $220, not including usage. And then obviously, because we're hiring the satellite phone, if we damage it, if we break it, we would have to pay to have it repaired or that sort of thing. So I've opted to include device insurance for the satellite phone, and so that is $132 for the duration of the hire. So the cost of the hire, the post-paid plan, and the insurance, it ends up coming out to be $850 for the satellite phone, and then on top of that, if we had to use it, we would be paying for usage on top of that. And the usage would be much like the one that I quoted before, 50 cents for an SMS, $1.20 per minute for phone calls. So really, if we hired a sat phone, I'm sorry, friends and family, but we wouldn't be staying in touch with you. We would purely just have it there to use in an emergency if we needed it. Now, $850 is quite a lot of the way to having your own satellite phone. And you got to think, if we did a 4 or 5 week trip at the start of the year, well, let's say you do a 4-week trip remote every year. Okay, granted, when you own your own sat phone, the plan is more expensive, but it doesn't take that long when you consider the usage, the $616 of usage. It's only 2-3 hires of a sat phone before your usage component has exceeded the cost of actually just buying your own sat phone. That's if you're doing it on your own. Now, like I said, hiring a sat phone becomes much more attractive if you're traveling in a group. Now, if you routinely travel with 2 or 3 other families, let's say you're traveling with 3 families, you're going away for the same amount of time as Jess and I, which is 5 weeks, and you were going to hire a sat phone and put it on a postpaid plan, that sort of thing's $850, 3 families, it's less than $300 each. That's for for 6 weeks. So you're looking at less than $50 a week for the satellite phone. Now, to have that with you and the peace of mind that if it all goes up shit creek, you can pull that satellite phone out and get medical assistance, organise spare parts, that sort of thing, it's invaluable. To be honest, if I was going to do a lot of remote travel and I didn't already have an option, and I'm going to get onto HF in a second, I would look at probably hiring a satellite phone, especially with trips where you can share that burden across multiple families, share the cost across multiple families. Or I would look at one of those GPS devices like a Garmin InReach, for example. That would be probably the way I'd go down if I didn't already have an option. HF radio is indeed an option for long-range communication. I am set up with a HF radio. I'm set up with a HF radio because that's what we use on all our variety trips that we film each year. We use the HF radio on variety events, and so we're set up with a HF predominantly for that, but the benefit being we also use it on our personal trips for long-range communication if we need. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but my HF radio, obviously I can use it like a radio. I can check in, I can talk just like a normal two-way radio. I can also make phone calls from it. I can send text messages. It's also got a GPS tracker wired into it, so I can send my GPS position to friends and family. It interconnects with a smartphone app, so that's where they can see me, where I am with my travelling, with the GPS signals. They can also message my HF radio with like a text message through the app. So it's pretty powerful. The cost of setting yourself up with a HF radio, they're not too dissimilar to a satellite phone, but they are a lot cheaper to run on a subscription-based cost. So for me, I bought my radio second-hand. I bought a second-hand Coden NGT. I've got down here, and I've gone and found a couple of listings. They range anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800 depending on the quality of the unit that you're buying. So remember, they're all going to be second-hand, and it also depends on what you're getting with that unit. $1,500 to $1,800 I would expect to include everything you need to get that unit set up. It should include your wiring looms, it should include the radio, the handpiece, the speaker, should include an auto-tuning antenna, and it should also include a GPS receiver, Garmin GPS receiver, which is colloquially coined the hamburger, and I'll show you what that looks like. It sits on the dash, it looks like a black hamburger. I would seriously look at getting your HF radio professionally installed, because there's a lot of faults that come about with radios where they don't perform as well as they should because they aren't installed correctly. Get it out there. Yeah, you need to get your radio installed correctly. You need to make sure it has strong earth points. You need to make sure that the wiring is away from any sources of noise like compressors and fridges, especially if you're going to have your antenna wired to your bull bar. Common rail diesel engines with the injector drivers and that sort of thing make a lot of noise or interference that can be heard in the static and the squelch on your HF radio, and that noise can actually overpower voice communications. So it pays to have your radio professionally installed, and I would encourage you to do that. Looking at the cost of a new HF radio, it becomes, I'll be honest with you, very cost prohibitive. If you were to go out and buy a new Coden Envoy X2, which is the latest generation of HF radio, you were looking at, for an auto-tuning antenna, radio, all the wiring looms, and the GPS hamburger, $4,000, not including installation to your car. So it's getting pretty expensive. To use your HF radio, you need to be a part of a HF radio network, and that allows you to program. That means that your radio is programmed with those networked channels. So my network of choice is Oz Travel Safety Net, and that costs me $100 for the year. $70 of that is my radio connection. $30 of that is my connection for my GPS tracking, my phone calls, my text messages, and all that. So $100 for the year, very cost effective considering the power that I've got in my HF radio. With that, phone calls, text messages, GPS tracking, there's no additional charges for them. You're not charged per minute for phone calls, you're not charged per message that you send. It is all included in that $30/$100 for the year. So it definitely pays to research which network you go on. Obviously with that, HF radio, like I said, there's multiple networks around Australia. Some of them have more base stations than others, which means they have a stronger network, so you're more likely to be able to get into a base station, check in with your SCED operators, send your GPS position. It's a lot easier to do it when there's more base stations. You have a better network. It's a stronger network. You also have some networks that are predominantly set up on the East Coast and are not going to be very effective for people that are in Western Australia. And you've also got other networks, for example, like VKS 737 and Oz Travel. That's the reason why I'm with Oz Travel. They have got their base stations set up all around Australia, so you have equal network coverage throughout the country, no matter where you travel. So, for example, my HF radio from Perth, I can get into Perth base, I can get into Alice Springs base. If the atmospheric conditions are very good, I can get into Kununurra base, but it's not often. That brings me on to one of the cons of a HF radio. You need to know how it works. It's not a simple device that you can just pick up and use. It's not like a UHF where you can just go, Bob, put your radio on channel 40. Yeah, good day, Bob. I'll talk to you, blah, 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 on channel 40. You need to understand how HF radio waves work, how they bounce off the ionosphere and the Earth, how they skip, that's what gives you the long distances of the HF radio. And you need to understand that when you're close to a base station, you need to go on a lower channel. When you're further away from a base station, you need to go on a higher channel. And same if you're trying to talk to somebody else on another HF radio, how far away they are from you, what channel you need to be on to cover that distance, how the peak of the day, so at midday when the sun's high in the sky and the sun's bombarding the ionosphere with a lot of radiation, how that weakens the ionosphere, reduces the skip, how at night time when you don't have the radiation bombarding the ionosphere a lot stronger and it comes lower down, you get much greater skip distances, so you get a lot greater transmission distance at night on HF radio than you do during the daytime. This is all the stuff that you've got to understand to get the most out of your HF radio. So that is by far one of the big cons of the HF radio, is the fact that you actually need to understand how it works to be able to get the most out of it. Whereas your satellite phones, your GPS devices, you pretty much just got to point them at the sky and they're fairly much idiot proof. I'm sorry this video was just a lot of me talking, but it was designed to be an educational piece. It was designed to be informative. What I'm trying to do is get you guys that do remote travel to start thinking about the fact that you can't just utilize a mobile phone booster or a UHF radio out in the bush to call for help, because you might be in a position where they don't work. And to be honest, I don't have to travel far from Perth to find myself in a place where I have no mobile phone service, so a booster's not going to work, and there are not a great deal of UHF repeaters around Perth, so I'm not going to be able to use a UHF repeater to call for help. So it leaves me with not a great deal of options, and my option is to have a device that either uses GPS or, in my case, HF radio to cover those long distances to get help in case that I need it. Plenty of information there to consider, guys. Like I said at the beginning, it's just an informative video. If you think that you need to invest in one of these devices, go out there and do your own research. Talk to your family and friends, see if any of them use one, see what options exist, have a look at the costs, because pretty much all of them are not a cheap item to set up, and all of them offer varying degrees of functionality. So yeah, anyway guys, I hope you found the video useful. Stay safe on the tracks and trails. Maybe one day we'll see you out there. If not, we'll see you in the next video. Remember, you can check out our other videos down here. You can go and subscribe down here. And yeah, happy safe adventuring. See you next time.